Wait, what?
Coach Jason Capson here.
So I was in the process of doing a different video. I was about to do a Nick Walker versus Derek Lunsford pose for pose video when this news broke. So if you haven't heard, if you haven't seen, the latest news is that Chris Bumstead is coming out of retirement after a very, very short retirement to compete at the Prague Pro in men's open bodybuilding. Yep, you heard that right. Chris Bumstead will be competing in November in the open class at the Prague Pro. Now, I know that's a shock to a lot of people, and I'm seeing all kinds of mixed reviews online with regards to this news. Some people are saying, oh, and the next Mr. Olympia, and some people are saying, oh, everybody in the open class better watch out. I have to tell you that I think this is, I don't say it's a mistake. I mean, Chris Bumstead could do whatever he wants. He's a grown adult, grown man, and he's the best classic physique bodybuilder to ever live, to ever compete. But the open division and the classic physique division are two very, very different divisions. And over the years as a coach, this kind of thing has always kind of drove me crazy because the criteria, if you look at the judging and you look at the judging criteria, we used to have female athletes that would compete in figure and compete in bikini and compete in wellness, all in the same show. And some of them would win different divisions, which makes absolutely no sense at all. Now, is Chris Bumstead large for classic physique? He sure is. Is he big enough to win an open division competition? Heck no. I don't think Chris has a chance in the open division. And for those of you that are saying that Chris is going to dominate in the open division, then I don't think you know a whole heck of a lot about bodybuilding, because open bodybuilding versus classic physique is like saying, it's like taking somebody from physique and saying that they could easily transition into classic physique and dominate. We know that is absolutely not the case. You cannot go from the board short division into classic physique in one fell swoop, literally weeks later, and make an impact. Chris would need to put on easily 40, maybe 50 pounds of muscle to compete in the open division at the Open Olympia. Now, can he go to Prague and do well? Absolutely. I think he will do well. I think he might finish in the top 5. But let's be real. There are some genuine open bodybuilders competing in that division. And, I'm a lifelong fan of Chris Bumps, and he's a fellow Canadian, and I got to give props where props is due. He's the best of the best ever as far as classic physique and from what a bodybuilder, in my opinion, should look like, classic physique, why Chris Bumstead is the man. I think open division should be a division where you go, heck no, there's no chance that I can do that. Nobody should look at an open division bodybuilder and go, yeah, I think I could do that in a year or two. And I don't think Chris can go into open division and make the kind of impact that some people are talking about. Can he go to the Prague Pro and finish top 5? Maybe. I guess we're going to find out. Can he win? No. Should he win? No. His body is not designed for open bodybuilding. So just for fun today, I want to do a comparison between Chris Bumstead, the reigning, defending, and ultimate classic physique Olympia champion, and the current and defending open Olympia champion, Samson Dauda, pose for pose. And let's have a look. Let me know what you think in the comments below. So first off, let's just throw the obvious right out there. These two are basically the same height. I think Samson may be a half an inch taller. Or they might be exactly the same height. They're 6'1", 6'2". But Samson weighs in at 300 pounds on stage. So there is no comparison just from sheer size between the two. So let's look at front double biceps to start. And again, as we know from the judging, you start from the ground up, you look at the legs. Obviously, Samson is gigantic, and his legs definitely are bigger than Chris's. Definition, I would say that that's probably pretty equal. X frame factor, again, you got to give this one to Samson. If you look at Samson's sheer size, symmetry, his shoulder to waist ratio, his lats, his arms, his chest, his legs, they are all bigger. And his conditioning is pretty darn close. So this front double biceps pose, you have to give it to Samson based on all of the criteria that we have for open bodybuilding. Open bodybuilding, size matters, symmetry, shape, conditioning, all of the above. And Samson has this in spades and beats Chris Bumstead on the front double biceps pose. Next, let's move to the front lat spread. Now, Chris, this is his best far. I don't think anybody can argue the fact that this is Chris's best pose by far, and I think he does it incredibly well. He's got great conditioning. He's got great legs. He's got great lats, but Samson is just too big and too dominant from top to bottom with sheer size, sheer mass, lots of symmetry. A great pose for Samson, a great pose for Chris too, but this is men's open bodybuilding. The winner of the front lat spread is definitely Samson Dauda. The next pose, side chest pose. Look at Samson's leg from the side. Look at the size of his chest. Look at the size of his arms. Just his arms alone, folks. Listen, I know that this is a good pose for Chris. He's got great separation in his legs. He's got great striations across his chest. But if you take the criteria for open men's bodybuilding, remember, they cannot judge this the same as they do in classic physique. You can't judge open bodybuilding the same way you do classic physique. Chris Bumstead gets demolished in this pose because Samson just has too much mass along with shape and size and symmetry. Side chest pose belongs to Samson Dauda. Now, keep in mind too, there are some poses in open bodybuilding that Chris Bumstead doesn't do. He doesn't have to do it as a mandatory pose in classic physique. One of those poses is the side triceps pose. They do not do that pose in classic physique. They can do it if they want in their posing routine, but it is not a mandatory pose. And if you look at side triceps, again, it's going to Samson because his arms are pretty much twice the size of Chris's arms. Side tricep pose, even though there's no photos, goes to Samson Dauda as well. Next up, back double biceps pose. Yes, Chris's back double bicep did improve dramatically for classic physique, but no, there is just no comparison between the two when it comes to a back double biceps pose. Look at Samson's hamstrings, look at his calves, look at the size of his back and the density of his back. Samson Dauda wins the back double bicep pose by a landslide. Next up, we have abs and thighs. And keep in mind, folks, you cannot just take Chris Bumstead and throw him into open bodybuilding and say because you like his physique better that he should win the open bodybuilding titles. There are different criteria for men's open bodybuilding than there are for classic physique. Chris does this pose very differently than Samson Dauda does. Open bodybuilders generally don't do the vacuum pose. Hottie does it sometimes, but as a rule, you're going to see it more the classic abs and thigh pose like Samson's doing in this photo. Again, just based on sheer size, based on definition. Look at, Samson's abs look fantastic. His thighs are gigantic. Definition is there. These are two of the best bodybuilders on the face of the planet in two different divisions. You cannot compare classic physique to open bodybuilding. Again, sorry, Chris. Love you, Chris. But this pose goes to Samson Dauda. Chris Bumstead can never beat Samson in open bodybuilding based on the current criteria, point blank, period. And then last up, we've got most muscular, and I found they're both doing basically the same pose here for the most muscular. And listen, this pose says it all. when you look at open bodybuilding and you look at classic physique, this pose really shows the difference between the two. Samson Dauda is a monster of a human being. Like I said, this is a great comparison because they're basically the same height, but you can see that there's about a 40 or 50 pound, maybe even more difference of muscle on stage. Conditioning, they're very close from a conditioning standpoint. Chris might have the edge in conditioning, but if you take the sheer size of Samson Dauda in this pose and all the other poses, Chris Bumstead loses to Mr. Olympia every single time. I wish Chris the best at the Prague Pro. But at the end of the day, Samson Dauda does not have to worry about his open Mr. Olympia title for a very, very long time. Chris Bumstead, this will probably be one and done, but let me know what you think in the comments below. Does Chris Bumstead have an actual chance in open bodybuilding, or is this just a one and done? Do you think this is even, again, some people are even looking at this and thinking that this is a joke or that this is just kind of silly and makes absolutely no sense. Let me know what you think, because again, Chris jumping into open says a lot about Chris. I think it's fantastic for the sport. He is by far the most popular figure in bodybuilding today, and I think if you can shed some light in the open bodybuilding division, maybe that's not a bad thing. But does he have a chance to win in the open bodybuilding based on the criteria that we have for the judging in open bodybuilding? I don't think so. But you let me know what you think in the comments below. Coach Jason Capson, signing out.